Hey everybody, and welcome to Retire Repurposed. I'm your co-host, Jared Sebesta. Today we're exploring one of Ben's favorite topics straight from the heart of his book, the essential difference between wealth and income. Many retirees enter retirement focused on a number, the size of their nest egg, only to find themselves trapped in what we call the money disorder. This fixation on preserving wealth rather than creating reliable income often leads to increased stress and a decreased quality of life, the exact opposite of what retirement should provide. Join us as we unpack this critical mental shift from accumulation to distribution, from growing wealth to generating income. While Ben is away on a transformative trip to New York gathering insights from other successful financial advisors, we're diving deep into this fundamental concept that could completely change your retirement experience. Enjoy this episode. All right, welcome back to the show. Jared Sebesta joining you once again here on Retire Repurposed. So glad that you're joining us here today. We've got another really interesting show on tap here today. We are talking about what have we learned? What has Ben Taatjes seen, and how has this message of repurpose expanded since the first edition of his book, Repurposed, the Untold Story of Retirement in America, which came out in 2017. On last week's show, there was one specific thing that we talked about where he explains how he probably didn't exemplify the thought of the positive aspects of work. Ben Taatjes joins me on the show now, Ben, and I want to just spend just a little bit of time before we dive into another aspect that has expanded greatly in the last 7-8 years since your first edition, this idea of positive things coming from work. Again, society says work is bad, work should be eliminated, and once work is eliminated, that's when your life really starts to take off and everything comes to fruition just like it's supposed to. But really, there's like an alignment issue. There's something having to do with how we view work, maybe how we viewed our life and our career pre-retirement that needs to get sorted out before you actually retire.
Yeah, Jared, I've told many clients this, and I stand by it. If you're not happy now, you will not be happy in retirement. So don't think that simply moving away from work will create happiness and fulfillment for you. Retirement doesn't do that. Retirement just gives you some time back. In fact, sometimes retirement makes your life worse because now you've got even more time to focus on the things that were causing the problem in the first place. So again, I think work highly underestimated in the value that it brings us as people. I think too many times we get caught in this worldly work that is full of thorns, right? Not the original way work was intended, where we actually get to enjoy the fruits of our labor, and we get to see more of that. After the fall, work looked different. But I do believe that people need to really take a good hard look at the positive aspects of work in their life.
I think that if you're still working and eyeballing retirement, I think it's time to view your job and career with the right mindset, so to speak. If you view it as the problem, you're going to unconsciously or maybe unintentionally give retirement this place that it doesn't deserve to be, because you will look at it as like, now that's the thing that's going to fix it. So again, to reiterate, a challenge when it comes to your working years, if you're still working, is to view it with the proper mindset, because when you do that, it's gonna then place retirement in its proper space in your head and your heart, right?
Yeah, it's anything in life, Jared. I mean, I think back to marriage too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you shouldn't look at your life as a single person as this is, once I get married, that'll be fine. Then you're looking at that marriage and that your spouse to fulfill you and make you who you were created to be. You are enough right now. And I think if you're coming into the tail end of your career and it's not going well and you're not liking it, there could be a job change in your future, not necessarily a retirement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You also talked about how work gives us some social connections, and it also gives us a proper identity. Again, if you have it with the proper mindset, you're looking at work as a platform for you to execute what you're good at. Again, if you're stuck in a job in a job you dislike, if you change your mindset, you may look at it as a proper way to execute those gifts that are inside of you. Nothing changes in retirement. You may not get paid for it at your job, but you still need to be doing those things and creating, because that's who we were created to be.
Yeah, the happiest retirees continue to be involved. They continue to make contributions to different things. They continue to use their skills, talents, abilities to impact people. And that, I think, I knew that prior to writing the book. I mean, that's what the book was essentially about. It was about finding that purpose. But I think since writing the book, there's so much, it's gotten so much deeper as far as how we talk to clients about that exact idea.
Underestimating the positive aspects of work. That was last week's show. If you missed that, go back on your favorite podcasting platform. We're on all the major ones. Search Retire Repurposed, and make sure you subscribe while you're there. But a great show there, really talking about work and its place in your life and even in your retirement. So today, Ben, we're going to kind of continue this series, part 2, so to speak, as to what you would expand, or what would you develop more so, or maybe what you've learned since launching your book, Repurposed, back in 2017. And we're going to talk about, again, mindset here today, right?
Yeah, and really it comes down, Jared, to getting deeper into what was my favorite chapter of the book. I wrote a chapter in Repurposed that's titled "Money Doesn't Buy Happiness, but Pensions Do." And the whole idea behind that chapter was helping the reader see there's a difference between wealth and income. So wealth is like this stockpile. It's this savings account, if you will, that sits out there. It's valuable, but not quite as valuable as income. And there's a difference. Income is the useful side of money. It's the paycheck, if you will. It's what you get to tangibly use, right? To experience things, to give to charities, to use. It's truly looked at as the means, right? Not the end. So many times wealth becomes the end goal. It's like, I'm worth X, I'm worth this, I'm worth that on paper. But the income is really the important part. So if I were to redo that chapter, I'd make it like twice as long, 3 times as long, and add some new ideas to it.
So let's break this down a little bit more. So wealth versus income, kind of like I different words but the same meaning, would be cash flow versus stockpile, so to speak. If your mindset on those two, let's just call them entities or tools, or however you want to, whatever words you want to give them, it's going to affect your mentality towards perhaps saving, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in the retirement conversation, obviously. But let's kind of dissect this a little bit more. You have to understand wealth and income, because if you don't, it's going to mess up how you view saving in your life. Break that down a little bit better than what I did.
Yeah, well, it's gonna allow you to spend, Jared. It's going to allow you to see that stockpile as something that you've put away so that you may use it in the future.
Yeah.
Money is a tool. That's all it is. It's a means. It's not the end. And I'll say that several times. I think people need to realize that, especially in retirement, when they see this account out there that they've saved for years in order to spend it. That's why they were doing it. That's why they were putting it away over time. Put the money in the account. Hey, someday, rainy day, we can use it, or retirement, we can use it. And then they have a hard time doing that. It's so hard to get people to shift from this save, and then you mean I got to spend this money that I've saved? And Jared, when it comes to saving, I think people have to realize there's a big difference between saving and hoarding, right? I think the difference is entirely in why you're putting the money away, right?
Yeah. So again, break that down just a little bit. So saving and hoarding, in my opinion, can look very similar on the outside, but break that down a little bit. Like, what would be some aspects or some consciousnesses, or how people are thinking, or heart postures as to why people would do one of the two?
Yeah, Jared, I think hoarding comes out of a place of fear and anxiety. It's like I just can't have enough. I can't be I can't be over prepared. I mean, there's so much that I have to have here saved up, where it's almost it almost consumes somebody. Whereas saving comes out of a place of, this makes sense. This is something that I will need down the road. I'm saving for a specific reason. right? I'm in my retirement account. I'm putting money away so that someday in retirement I can spend it.
Yeah.
I'm saving money for a wedding. I'm saving money for child's education. All those things make sense to me. But when you have so much that it becomes to look like it's hoarding, where it's out of fear and anxiety, or even worse, out of a love for money, where it's like this end game, not the means, I think that starts to look very different.
I think we can all teeter-totter on that line, and we can do this with other possessions. On past shows, I brought up my firewood pile, which that's clearly hoarding, because I've got these pretty little piles, and then once winter comes and I want to use them, I'm like, I don't want to use those. Geez,
got to save that.
Yeah, I got to save that, and then people would come over to my house. They're like, why do you have so much wood here? I mean, you have like years worth of wood. And then again, that's where the hoarding comes out. It's like, well, you just can't what if we have a really bad winter, And so again, it's a really delicate dance. I think if people were really, really honest with themselves, I think that many of us probably fall into that gray area, more so. But I love how you put that. Like, hoarding is out of fear, and you can never have enough. And I think there are some very positive aspects of saving. The Bible is very clear. I mean, we should have storehouses of grain, stored up. So when there are drier years, we have something to eat and something to plant. So I love this idea that it does come down to a mindset. Since you've written the book, there was a phrase that we started talking about a couple of years ago, called the money disorder, and that really speaks directly to this idea. As we were talking about the money disorder, it really was birthed out of clients that you have had that have plenty, and then all of a sudden they get to retirement, and not only are they not spending it, it's almost as if they want to accumulate more of it, and that really puts people in a really tough spot.
It does, Jared. I think the money disorder, if I look at it strictly biblically, like if I look at the best verse that can explain that, it's Ecclesiastes 5:11. Mm-hmm. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owner except to feast his eyes on them? Right. So that money disorder comes from a place of, I want to keep it there just so I can see it, just so it's there. So I know that I'm going to be okay. So back to your wood pile, like at some point that does no good except for to look at it and know it's there. Mm-hmm. It creates this place where we are, we feel as if we're comfortable. We feel as if we're at peace because we have this thing in our life, whatever that is for you. Maybe that's your big retirement account, your big home, whatever it is. And I think therein lies the danger. Is when we start looking at these things as the end goal, right, versus the means. Yeah. It's wood to be burned to create heat for your home. It's a retirement account to pull money out so you can feed your family and you can live and enjoy your retirement years. Right. The money disorder comes when you don't use it for that, when that money just sits out there. Yeah. Furthermore, when you're accumulating it, I think the money disorder can impact people too, when they start to really defer life in order to just save as much as they possibly can. Right. And we see that too. Mm-hmm. We see that too in our work, Jared, where people in my line of business talk all the time about tax deferral, right? And that's retirement plans allow us that. We were able to put money away pre-tax into an account. Therefore, someday when we take it out, hopefully we have a lower tax bracket and you spend it then. Mm-hmm. I'm very okay with that idea, planning for the future and saving money, getting some tax deferral. But what I'm never okay with is life deferral, right? We shouldn't do that and then just scrimp every penny today. That can bring regret. When people come to us and they've got so much being saved and they've got so much in their bank accounts and they continue to not live today and enjoy today, someday I know they will see regret. And that is actually quite common as well.
So let me ask you a question, and I'm going to really put you on the spot here with this one. So then how much is enough, right? Which is a really common question that you will get as people come in and work with you and your team, and they'll how much do I need? So what? That's the kind of the $1 million question, right? Like, no pun intended, but like, so then what is it? How do you plan that out? How do you get that down on paper to show somebody like, this is how much you need, and now it's time to flip that switch?
Well, Jared, it comes on to planning, right? So there is probably an amount out there that somebody should have saved to create a certain lifestyle for today. So one of the questions we'll ask clients, first of all, is, what are you stewarding today? What's the total of everything? But the second one, and a very, very important one, is what do you need today and in the future as far as income? So what are you spending today? So people oftentimes like to know. We're really good at trying to compare ourselves to others, right? So say, well, what do people have in their retirement accounts? What's normal? Right. I get that question a lot. I'm like, well, it's so different based on your lifestyle and what you want, right? And how you want your retirement lifestyle to look. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm more about defining like today and your future lifestyle needs, and then coming at it as to what you should have saved for that time. But in that discussion, the posture of your heart needs to be not over preparedness, like hoarding, but I need enough. Like I need enough, but I think there's danger when we start to say I've got too much. Mm-hmm. And most people can see that, but they generally need a little help, right? In seeing what that too much number is. I've worked with very wealthy families, Jared, where we actually have set an income cap. Mm-hmm. That's something very, very freeing to a high income earner to say, okay, I'm making, and this might sound like a high number to people, but let's say I work with somebody who says, I'm making $1 million. That is my income cap. I don't need more. You could argue whether or not they needed $1 million in the first place, but that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. For them, that's the number. Okay, so they set a cap there, and I think that can be a very freeing thing as well.
Yeah, I love this idea because we're talking about a heart posture there, and I want to move on from this point, but I can't help but think about a book I read 2 years ago called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, and he is like the epitome of, like you save, but you save just enough. You've got your number, and once you hit that number, you start what he says deaccumulating, kind of the shark fin issue, and then you die with zero. Now, he doesn't mean that literally, but it's a mindset. That's what the book is about, a mindset of deaccumulating, living life because you saved a certain amount. I think that freaks a lot of people out if they were to be proposed with that type of plan, to be like, okay, sir, you have now saved this much. Now it's your job to spend it the rest of your life and essentially die with zero. We're not suggesting that's the plan for everybody, but I think that makes people it makes people with a money disorder really, really nervous to be proposed that type of idea.
Yeah, excellent book, Jared. We had a whole series on that idea, Die with Zero. But I think if you're looking at income as the useful side of money, not necessarily wealth. If you're saying, I want a certain set income that will last until the end, and if your goal is not to pass on significant wealth to your kids, which, by the way, we're going to talk about next, is probably this a situation where you should attempt to at least be in the deaccumulation. We talk about the shark fin, where you build wealth, and then all of a sudden you should tail it off on the other side, where you're using that money to live and give. I think that's what most people's plans should look like. Instead, we tend to accumulate more and more and more. And I think there's a problem with that.
If you're listening to this and you know that you struggle with this idea, I don't know. I would challenge you to read some books that would really challenge this mindset. Bill Perkins, that book really, really messed with me 2 years ago when I read that. And it wasn't not so much that, like, Jared, you're hoarding, but it really gave me a different perspective on how to, what am I working for? Why am I spending these years building and building wealth and retirement plans and accounts? And it really put that in perspective for me. So I would challenge you to read that book as well.
I think sometimes, the wealthiest families that we deal with struggle with the idea of, what do I do with it all at some point, right? I mean, if I am in this mode and if I simply can't, spend it and give it as I'm living, and there's going to be something left over. Should my kids get that? We know from studies that, I've read countless studies on this, but usually generational wealth doesn't last past the third generation. Jared. It's something that lasts for 2 generations. It's estimated over 70% of wealthy families lose it by the second generation, over 90% by the third. Very rarely does it go to the fourth. So I think in my next book, or the revised version, we'll talk more about the mindset of not creating a trust fund for your kids. Yes, you want them to be taken care of should something happen, but most people shouldn't live life in a way that they scrimp today with their relationships with their family so they can save more, that someday their kids can use that money. Mm-hmm. I think many times that happens.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is it ends up creating more problems than it does solutions when we have that mindset.
Again, when you have the mindset that we're here to save it, it has a specific goal. It's to spend it or give it to the next generation. Hopefully, and again, I don't know if we want to break this down, but hopefully while you're still alive, so you're not deferring life to the very end. So you don't get to the end of your life and be like, man, I wish I would have not held on so tightly, but lived more, because you now realize that the end game wasn't to just have a bunch of money in the bank. And we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here, aren't we?
It's heavy, and it's tough conversations, Jared. So when we sit down with a family who's has significant wealth, and significant wealth can mean many different things to people, yeah. But really it's any amount of money that's going to go past your life, right? So that's the discussion is, there's really only 3 things you can do with it, right? Your money can go to the government, form of estate tax or taxes. You can give it to charity, right? Or your children. The rest of it, hopefully you've spent before then, but that's really all that can happen at death.
Yeah.
So those discussions are deep. They're heavy discussions. And what I'm finding, Jared, and that's a whole nother show we're going to talk about, is something I'd change in my next book, is more time on legacy planning and preparing the next steward.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. And we've got a couple of minutes left here, but I want you to talk about this story because it did not make it in your book, and it's really been something that we've come back to a lot of, and really paints a really important picture. But it's this idea of legacy, but more specifically down to a ketchup bottle. Tell that story.
Yeah, Jared, that really what I was trying to get at with that story was that we want to make our kids' lives better than our own. And that comes in this idea of saving for them and putting money aside for them. And many times it doesn't work that way. And why do we want that? I think it can be best described by looking at this story with this ketchup bottle. And my kids and I were outside, my family and I were outside having a barbecue dinner one night. And I looked over and noticed that there were not 1 but 2 ketchup bottles there. One was about a quarter full, and the other one was completely full and brand new. And I asked my daughter, why do you have 2? And she said, well, that one's pretty much empty. And of course, it struck me in that it's not. We have a quarter of a thing of ketchup for 4 people. It's more than enough, but they're already moving on to the next bottle of ketchup. And I thought of how my grandparents would have looked at that bottle of ketchup. They would have taken that bottle of ketchup that was a quarter full and used every last drop, and then they would have put water in it, shook it up, right? And they would have used that flavoring in some casserole or something. My parents' generation, they probably would have looked at that quarter full bottle and said, yeah, it's pretty much gone. I'm going to use at least every drop, and then I'm going to recycle it, right? I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to probably get every little bit out by putting water in it. Mm-hmm. My generation probably gets the last few squeezes out, but tosses it pretty easy. Mm-hmm. My kids' generation, it gets towards the bottom, and when you squeeze it, it makes the funny noise, and they're like, yeah, I'd rather not use that anymore. It's kind of crusty on the top, and they throw it away. So, Jared, what that showed me and what that got me thinking was that, my parents' generation is a little removed from my grandparents' generation. And they probably are a little less careful with what they have. And my generation is even a little more removed from that, and my kids less so. So what that taught me, Jared, was that we want to make our kids' lives so much better. Like, we want to make their lives better than ours. But sometimes we end up forgetting to teach them the most important parts of life. We forget to show them the hard work. We forget to show them the frugality, the different things that, again, from generation to generation kind of get lost, right, in the translation.
securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.